Daniel was used to the silence of the woods at dawn. For years now, since his daughter Emily was born, he had learned to find comfort in the solitude of these morning walks. The tall pines seemed to stand as guardians, the rustle of their branches like whispers meant only for him. He loved the way the fog clung to the ground, the way the world seemed still, as if it was holding its breath before the chaos of the day. Life had not been easy for him. Emily's mother had left when she was just 2 years old, unable to handle the strain of responsibility. Daniel never blamed her out loud, but in the quiet corners of his heart, the wound still stung. Since then, he had worked long days at the auto shop, picking up every shift he could. Bills were always a step ahead of him, and he was always running behind. Yet, despite the struggle, Emily's laugh at the end of the day was enough to keep him going. These morning hikes were his only indulgence, the one place he could breathe, think, and remind himself that he was still alive, not just surviving. But that morning was different. He almost ignored it at first. The faint sound had been so soft, he thought it might have been an animal. A cry of a fox, maybe, or the moan of branches bending under the weight of the wind. But then it came again. Help, please. Daniel froze, his boots digging into the earth. Every muscle in his body tensed, his instincts torn between fear and urgency. The sound was muffled, broken, as though the voice was clawing its way out of the ground itself. He turned his head slowly, scanning the trees, the bushes, the uneven ground. His pulse thundered in his ears. "Hello," he called out, his voice rough and low. For a long moment, nothing. Then, "Here, help me." It was coming from the clearing just ahead. Without thinking, Daniel pushed through the brush, his hands swiping branches aside, his heart hammering with every step. When he broke into the open space, his breath caught. The earth was disturbed. The patch of ground looked freshly dug, the soil uneven, darker than the rest of the forest floor. Daniel's stomach churned. He stepped closer, his boots sinking slightly into the loosened dirt. And then he heard it again. "Please." He dropped to his knees. His hands clawed at the dirt, pulling it away desperately. His fingernails tore against stones, blood mixing with the soil. "Hold on. I'm here, I've got you." The more he dug, the more frantic he became. The thought of a person buried alive, gasping for air beneath layers of suffocating earth, it nearly made him sick. His hands struck something soft, fabric, damp with dirt. He clawed harder, adrenaline flooding his veins. Then a hand shot upward through the soil, trembling violently, grasping at the air. Daniel caught it instantly, gripping tight. "I've got you. You're going to be okay." The hand was small, delicate, with a jeweled bracelet that had been dulled by dirt. He yanked at the soil around it, freeing the arm, the shoulder, the neck. And then finally, a face emerged, gasping for breath, eyes wide with terror. She coughed violently, dirt spilling from her mouth. Her lips quivered, her lashes heavy with mud, her cheeks pale beneath streaks of soil. Daniel brushed at her hair, his own chest heaving as if he had been the one trapped. "You're okay," he said again, even though the words sounded hollow in his ears. Her eyes met his, wild and broken. They were the kind of eyes that had seen something unspeakable, something no one should ever see. "Please," she whispered hoarsely, her voice raw. "Don't let them find me." Daniel frowned, confusion knotting in his chest. He kept digging, freeing her torso, then pulling her up into his arms. She was trembling, her body weak, but there was a sharpness in her gaze that made him pause. "Who did this?" he demanded softly, his voice urgent. "Who buried you here?" Her lips trembled. "My family." The word landed like a stone in Daniel's gut. Family. What kind of family did something like this? He scanned her clothes, torn but expensive, a silk blouse ruined by dirt, diamond studs still clinging to her ears. She didn't look like someone who belonged in the woods, certainly not discarded in a shallow grave. "Family," he echoed, almost disbelieving. She nodded weakly, her throat straining to form the words. They wanted me gone." Daniel felt the back of his neck prickle. He looked down at her, really looked at her. Beneath the dirt and panic, she was striking, with delicate features and a presence that spoke of wealth, of privilege. Not someone from his world. And yet here she was, clinging to him like he was her last anchor. "Who are you?" he asked carefully. Her breathing hitched. She seemed to hesitate, as though telling him would cost her the last of her strength. Finally, she forced the words past her lips. "I'm Claire Hastings." Daniel's blood ran cold. Hastings. The name was everywhere. On skyscrapers, on hotels, on charity boards and political campaigns. The Hastings family was old money, the kind of wealth that could crush entire towns if they wished. And this woman, who had just been pulled out of the earth like discarded trash, was one of them. He stared at her, disbelief and fear swirling inside him. Why would the Hastings bury one of their own alive? Before he could process it, Claire grabbed his wrist with surprising force. Her nails dug into his skin, her eyes blazing with a fierce desperation that almost frightened him. Her lips brushed close to his ear, trembling, her words a broken whisper. "They'll kill you too, if you keep me alive." The forest seemed to fall silent around him. Not a bird, not a breath of wind. Just her words, heavy and sharp, lodging themselves deep in his chest. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. His instinct screamed at him to run, to take his daughter and disappear before whatever storm this woman carried with her found its way to his door. But another instinct, one just as strong, told him he couldn't leave her. Not like this. He looked down at her again. Claire Hastings, billionaire heiress, buried alive by her own family, trembling in his arms. And now, because he had heard her voice in the woods, because he had dug through the earth with his bare hands, because he had pulled her out and let her breathe again, he was part of it. Whether he liked it or not. Daniel's arms ached as he half-carried, half-dragged Claire through the undergrowth. Every branch seemed to snag at her blouse, every root threatened to trip them. Her weight pressed against him, yet she clung with a grip that refused to let go. Her whisper still echoed in his mind. "They'll kill you too if you keep me alive." He had thought about leaving her there. God knew he had. Walking away would have been safer. For him. For Emily. But something about the way she had looked at him, eyes burning with both terror and defiance, made it impossible. The morning sun began breaking through the trees as he reached the narrow path leading to his truck. Sweat clung to his forehead, his hands streaked with mud. He eased Claire into the passenger seat, draping his worn flannel jacket around her shoulders. She shivered, though the air wasn't cold enough for it. "Where are you taking me?" she croaked, her voice like gravel. Daniel started the engine, his jaw tight. "Somewhere safe. My place." Her head whipped toward him, fear flashing across her dirt-streaked face. "No, you can't. If they find me there, they'll find you. Your family." "I don't have anyone but my daughter," Daniel cut in. "And right now, she's at school. You need help. Medical help." Her eyes softened for a moment, almost guilty. "A daughter, yes, 7 years old, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe. So, you need to tell me the truth. All of it. Who buried you? Why?" Claire looked down at her trembling hands. Silence filled the cab, stretching thin and taut, until finally she whispered, "My brother. And my uncle. They've been waiting for this moment for years." Daniel frowned, glancing at her. "Why? Your family." Her laugh was hollow, sharp as broken glass. "Family means nothing when billions are at stake. My father passed 6 months ago, and the inheritance, it was split unevenly. Most of it came to me. They hated it. I refused to sign over my shares, refused to hand control of the company to them. So they did the next best thing." Her voice broke, tears pooling in her eyes. "They tried to erase me." Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter. The thought of men with limitless money and power deciding life and death so casually twisted his stomach. He had always thought his life hard, scraping paycheck to paycheck, but this was another kind of cruelty. A darker one. "You were supposed to disappear," Claire continued softly. "They wanted the world to think I ran away, that I couldn't handle the pressure. But I heard them talking. They planned to stage it. To bury me until there was nothing left." Daniel shook his head slowly. "Jesus Christ." She turned to him suddenly, her hand grabbing his arm again. "You should leave me. Drop me off somewhere. Pretend you never saw me. If they find out you saved me, I'm not leaving you." Daniel snapped before he could stop himself. His own words surprised him, but he meant them. He had already made his choice the moment he dug her out of the ground. They rode in silence until they reached the small house Daniel rented on the edge of town. He helped Claire inside, every movement careful, his mind racing. Emily's toys were scattered on the floor, crayons on the coffee table. The normalcy of the space contrasted sharply with the mud-streaked woman sitting weakly on his couch. Claire looked around, her lips trembling into the faintest smile. "It's warm here. It's not much," Daniel muttered, rummaging for a first aid kit. "But it's safe." He cleaned the dirt from her wounds, wrapping scratches on her arms, ignoring how soft her skin was beneath his rough hands. She winced but didn't pull away. For the first time since he found her, she seemed to breathe a little easier. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, suddenly. Daniel paused, looking at her. "Because if I walked away, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I've seen people ignore someone in trouble before. I swore I wouldn't be that kind of man. Not for Emily's sake." Her gaze lingered on him, searching. "You're risking everything. For me." He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. The hours passed. Daniel tried to keep his mind steady, but paranoia crept in. Every car that passed the street, every creak of the house made him glance toward the window. Emily would be home soon. How would he explain Claire to her? What if men came looking? What if the Hastings had already realized Claire wasn't where they left her? As evening fell, Daniel drove to pick up Emily. She climbed into the truck, her backpack bouncing, her smile bright. "Hi, Daddy," she chirped, before noticing the tired look on his face. "You okay?" "Yeah, sweetheart," he said softly. "Just a long day." Back home, Emily's eyes immediately fell on Claire. She tilted her head, curiosity sparkling. "Who's that?" Claire stiffened, panic flickering across her face. Daniel quickly said, "This is Claire. She's a friend who needed help." Emily, in her innocence, simply grinned. "Hi, Claire. Want some of my cookies? Daddy bought them yesterday." Claire blinked, as if no one had ever offered her something so small, so pure, without an agenda. I'd like that," she whispered, her voice breaking. For the first time, Daniel saw a different side of her. Not the billionaire heiress, not the woman buried alive, but someone vulnerable, someone who had been stripped of everything except her humanity. That night, when Emily was asleep, Daniel and Claire sat at the kitchen table, the dim light casting shadows across their faces. "You can't stay here forever," Daniel said quietly. "I know," she replied. "But I don't know where to go. Everyone I thought I could trust is gone. They're either bought, or too afraid to help." Daniel leaned back, running a hand over his face. "Then we need a plan. They'll come looking. And if what you're saying is true, they won't stop until they find you." Claire's eyes glistened. "You don't understand how powerful they are. They own police, judges, politicians. If they find out about you, your daughter." "Don't." Daniel cut her off sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Don't threaten me with what they might do. I've lived my whole life scraping by, protecting Emily from everything I can. I'm not about to start running now." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, Claire reached across the table, her fingers brushing against his. "You don't have to do this alone," she whispered. "I owe you my life. And maybe that means something." Her words sent a shiver through him, not from fear, but from something deeper. Something dangerous. It was then he realized, whatever this was between them, it was more than survival now. They had become tied together by something neither of them had asked for, but both could no longer escape. Days passed. Claire regained some of her strength, though the fear in her eyes never faded. Daniel kept working at the shop, but every moment apart from her nod at him. The danger was real, pressing closer with each sunrise. And yet, in the quiet evenings, when Emily slept and the house was still, Claire would speak softly about her life before, all the luxury, all the loneliness. One night, she admitted, "I've never been more alive than I am right now. Sitting here, in this tiny kitchen, eating cookies with your daughter." Daniel studied her, his chest heavy. Strange, isn't it, how sometimes the simplest things mean more than all the money in the world? Her eyes held his then, something unspoken sparking between them. But the fragile peace couldn't last. It was a week later when Daniel noticed the black SUV parked down the street. It hadn't been there before. Its tinted windows reflected nothing, and it didn't move for hours. His stomach dropped. When he stepped inside, Claire was standing at the window, pale as a ghost. "They've found me," she whispered. Daniel's heart thundered. He thought of Emily asleep in her room, of the quiet mornings they had shared, of the promise he had made to protect her no matter what. And now, because of the woman sitting in his house, all of it was at risk. Claire turned to him, her eyes glistening, her lips trembling as she leaned close. Her breath brushed his ear as she whispered the words that would change everything. "Run with me. Take Emily. Leave it all behind. Because if we stay, none of us will survive." Daniel closed his eyes, her whisper sinking deep into his bones. He had saved her once from the earth. But now, she was asking him to save them both, from the world itself. And for the first time in years, he didn't know what choice to make.